Welcome to another episode of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son. Hello, my name is Kevin McLemore. I am a three-time published author, and right now I'm the little guy on the stage when we bring on our special guest today. I'm joined with my co-host, Ife, entertainment entrepreneur, and co-host to Talking with Kevin and Son and Motivational Sundays. Today, this episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of story, our mission is to uplift, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is hope, helping other people every day. And today, and I'm going to say this over and over like you didn't hear it the first time, I am honored to be able to share this stage with a remarkable young man, a speaker, world champion speaker, author of a world-class speaking into action. I think I got that right. World-class speaker, speaking in action, husband, father, best-selling author with Amazon. He is also one of the top upcoming public speakers and educators in the business. Today, we like to share the story of Mr. Craig Valentine. Before he became a world champion, talk about the power of telling an impactful story, how to set up a speech, overcoming the fear of speaking in front of people, and maybe if we get lucky, Mr. Valentine will share with us those tips that he has made so famous on the internet of how to become a public speaker and make a living doing it. So with that said, I'd like to welcome the world and our listening audience to Mr. Valentine. How you doing, young brother?
I'm doing great. I got a little bit of gray in my beard now, so I'm not sure how young I am. But I always tell people, they say, why don't you use like the Dark and Lovely, the Clairol, or something like that? I say the older I look, the more people listen, right?
Yeah. I believe it or not, when I was your age, because I didn't age as fast as everyone else, I used to dye the tint of my eyebrows gray, so people would actually pay attention to me, respect me as an adult. So I know your pain, but you are, for ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have not met Mr. Valentine, he's a good-looking young brother. He is so much fun. This guy is amazing. Toastmasters during the COVID, I got a chance to actually attend the class to be in Toastmaster. My first speech, for some reason, I got very lucky and I killed it. Person in the class basically came through and says, "You got to meet this Mr. Valentine." Sent me over a link to it. I was lucky enough to track him down to the internet. He picked up the phone. He's only a hop skipping away outside of Philadelphia. And that's how our story began. But enough about me. I want to share your story, Mr. Valentine, of how you got started before you became world champion Toastmaster speaker. When everyone else had attempted it, you did it on your first shot. People are hating you. I love you. What was your story before you became a notable speaker? Tell me about the life of you.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that people hate me, because they do, because I won in my first year. I joined Toastmasters in March of 1998. I got what's called a competent Toastmasters in March of 1999 and won the world championship in August of 1999. And you're right, when I tell audiences that, they clap, but Kevin, I can feel the haters in the room. I can feel it. But they don't realize, because they're looking at me like, well, you don't even know what it feels like to lose a contest. I say, yes, I do. What they don't understand is I lost the humorous speech contest at the club level. That's the absolute lowest level. And I'll never forget, there was a seasoned Toastmaster named Alan Mish who came up to me afterwards, and he said, "Craig, you can win the world championship of public speaking." And Ife, I was like, "What are you talking about? I just lost the humorous speech contest at the club level." He said, "That's okay." He said, "The only thing wrong with your humorous speech was that it wasn't funny." But he said to me, he said, "Look, if you use that same type of speech where you're making an impact, you're providing value to people, and you have some humor in it, that can take you a long way for the world championship type of a competition." So that's exactly what I did. And he encouraged me to do it. And I went all the way through and won the world championship in my first try. So that was the story behind that. But if it wasn't for Alan Mish, I probably wouldn't be here speaking today.
Have you always been a young man that liked to talk?
No, I was a kid who had a lisp. In fact, you might know this, but when I was 10 years old, there was a gentleman, I just refer to him as Mr. H. I don't want to put him out there, but he was a follower of one of my friends. I saw him in the mall, and he told me, he said, don't talk anymore, because every time you open your mouth, you remind me of Daffy Duck. Yeah. Yeah, I'm 10 years old. Destroyed me. You know, you're friends with Les Brown. You know, Les says when you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are.
Right.
Right. And I didn't want people making fun of me. So about 4 or 5 years, you couldn't get a word out of me. And then finally, about 4 or 5 years later, when I kind of forced myself to face reality, I started going through what I now call my 4 R's to remarkable results. And that led me to becoming the world champion of public speaking. And the best part was I saw Mr. H a couple of months after I won the world championship. And he came up to me, and you won't believe what he said. He came up to me and he said, I read your articles. I saw you in the newspaper. He said, man, that's wonderful what you were able to accomplish. He said, but that one article, I can't believe that at the tender age of 10, some man would have the nerve to call you Daffy Duck.
Whoa.
I say, I don't know how to tell you this, but it was you. He said, you don't remember? I said, you don't remember? He said, no, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And I got angry in that moment because I've been carrying this with me all this time, Ife. And then I something changed in me. And I looked at him at that moment. I said, don't apologize, because I would not be the world champion. I would not be the speaker. I would not even be the man I am today if you hadn't stopped and confronted me and made me face reality. And so in that moment, so much was lifted off my shoulders, and I actually said, thank you.
Way to go.
And then I said to him, and I was just joking around, I said, but as far as you not remembering what you did to me, I think that's despicable. And he laughed and I laughed. Had a great time, but it all came full circle. And I just want to say rest in peace, because we lost him about 6 months ago.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes you can turn adversity into an advantage.
That's it.
And the starting spot for any type of change is to face reality. And that's what he made me do.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about when people tell you what you can't do or what you're not going to amount to. That's their confirmation into the universe of what you're going to be. So I'm glad he said that. I'm glad you brought up the 4 R's, because I didn't have that in my notes. And since you brought it up, what the hell are the 4 R's?
Yes, let's go.
Well, it's when it comes to change, you got to face reality. Wherever you are right now, you got to face reality. Then we need to relinquish what's in the way, because everything is either on your way or in your way. There is nothing neutral. So we got to figure out what those things are that we need to let go. And a lot of times it's people. Hey, I don't want to hear that, but a lot of times there's some people we need to let go of.
Yeah. And
then some grudges too, right? Grudges will take, I always say when you're holding a grudge, the grudge is also holding you. Yeah, Ife, it's holding you back from everything you ever could have been, everything you ever could have done. So we need to relinquish some things as well. Then we need to rely on our vision. I always say imagination is the best nation in the world. We need to put it out there, create a visualization by Shakti Gawain, really focus on that vision and make sure your vision is bigger than your fears. And if you do that, chances are you're going to trend towards it. I always tell people the second best nation in the world is donation. But anyway, first is magic. So then we get to reform to a better way. And I always say it's not about changing all at once. It's about changing small and changing often. Changing small and changing often. So if you can do those 4 R's, chances are you're going to, guess what you're going to do? Now you're going to face your new reality. And it's just a cycle of success. And that's what I've been looking at doing for years and years and years, and helping organizations do as well.
All right.
I feel motivated already. Already. Yes.
It's really important to make sure that you face reality, though. And it doesn't matter where you are. When I was in prison visiting, look at Kevin's face. I had
Yeah, the phrasing on that one was crazy.
Yeah, got you, right? One of the inmates came up after my presentation. He said, Craig, I'm getting out of here in a few months and I'm feeling good. I'm back on the right track. I said, well, look here. There's a quote by Will Rogers that says you might be on the right track, but if you just stand there, you're going to be run over. So he left. I was glad that he felt like he was back on the right track. But Kevin, I kind of felt like I was standing still as a speaker at that time. And I don't know if you've ever felt like you were getting better or worse at what you do, or ever wondered if you're getting better or worse at what you do. So I decided to call up this lady who's supposed to be one of the best public speaking coaches in the country. And I said, listen, I need a coach and I need to be coached by you. And she was British. She said, are you sure? I said, yes, I did my research. I know you're the one I want to coach me. She said, do you know how much I charge? I said, it doesn't even matter. She said, well, that's great. That's wonderful. That's fantastic attitude. That will be $4,000 per day. I said, I'm pretty happy with the skills that I have. Thank you. But what I realized in that moment was so many people look at the price of doing something and they don't look at the cost of not. So I decided to go out there and I got coached by a lady named Patricia Fripp. I don't know if you know her, FRIPP.com. Go there, get something, tell her I sent you. She's fantastic. She says to me, give me the beginning of your keynote speech. I'm confident. I gave her the first few lines. And she looked me directly in the eyes and she said, okay, I'm going to recommend that you never start that way again. Yeah. And I realized I'm going to have to put my ego on the Las Vegas Strip and just take this beating and go through these. And I went through 2 days of coaching from her. And what I came to realize was, even though I was the world champion of public speaking, Kevin, I was nowhere near where I needed to be as a speaker. And I came to understand that what got me here won't get me there. Right? What got me to this moment won't get me there. And it's true for everybody. What got you here won't get you there. It always takes new tools, new strategies, new techniques, new ways. I always say to people, if you want to get to new heights, you got to take new steps. A lot of people just want to keep drilling into what they've done in the past and think that's going to make the breakthrough. No. You've got to figure out that what got you here won't get you there. That's why just this week, I started creating content on TikTok. I started creating content on YouTube Shorts. I started doing the things that I haven't done before so I can get to places that I've never been.
That's it.
Go ahead, Evie. I know you want to ask him a question.
Yes. So based on all of these accomplishments that you have, being an Amazon best-selling author, world champion speaker, first time out, tell us how you became a world champion speaker and what impact did it have on your life, being that you're an author and a world champion speaker now?
I think it's really important I saw it. I didn't see myself being a world champion, but I saw myself being a speaker that could impact people's lives. And I remember when I was an events planner back in the mid-90s, I was putting on shows for like technology expos for different military bases and institutions and government institutions. And, and one of my jobs, Ife, was to actually set up the stage for the speaker. Yeah. All the while wanting to be the speaker, right? I'm setting up the stage. So I'm going to these ballrooms and I'm taping down the power cords so nobody would trip over them. I'm moving the chairs around. I'm moving the lectern around. I'm moving more chairs. They used to call me the chairman because I used to move so many chairs around. That was one of my jobs. But it never failed. Every single time, which was daily, every single time that I walked into one of those ballrooms, I'd actually go up to the front and I'd stand behind the lectern and I'd envision it and then envision touching lives. And there was something I said to myself, and I knew I would share this story one day. Every single time I stood behind the lectern, I would say this to myself: today I move the chairs, tomorrow I move the audience. And that's what's been happening ever since. So I saw it first. I did what I call TEG. You want to temporarily experience your goal in some way, form, or fashion. And so by doing that, it made the goal not just something that I wanted to get, but something I didn't want to let go of, right? Because I already experienced it. When you do that, now you got a pull and a push moving you forward towards your goals. And so that's what happened. And I became addicted to reading. And I read so many books on public speaking before I ever gave one speech. I think I spent probably 4 or 5 years reading books. And so by the time I got into Toastmasters, I went to the first club meeting and I gave us what's called a table topic. They throw a topic out and you speak on it. And I won the contest. And it wasn't until years later that I realized they always make the guest win. Because then they know you're going to come back for more.
Right.
So that when I joined Toastmasters, then it was a meteoric rise because of all the reading I had done and all the studying I had done. And then I guess I didn't know any better than people were saying, well, in your first year, you're not going to win because it's politics and this. I guess I just didn't know. I was too naive to listen to that.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, I'm on stage as the world champion of public speaking. So I saw it first and then I got there. That's why I say imagination is the best nation in the world. And I ask people, what stage are you mentally stepping on thousands and thousands of times? Because I believe if you do the mental work, you'll get the real world reward. So I'm constantly looking at what's that next stage I'm going to be stepping on.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you busted my Toastmaster bubble just a minute ago, because I thought I had something in common because I did the same introduction speech and won too. Now I know that I didn't win.
I don't know if other clubs do it the same way. I know my club was. If you're a guest, chances are they're going to make you the winner. Yeah.
They probably do it. During COVID, everyone was a motivational speaker on what was it, Clubhouse and everything else.
Yeah.
Very few were making a living at doing it. And I listened to a lot of very talented motivational speakers. They had a lot of following. And when I listened to their story, I'm going 5 minutes into it. I'm going, why am I still sitting here?
Right.
I know from being an author myself, the power in the story is key. Being a speaker, how do you coach and teach someone to pen a powerful story in the very beginning? How do you set that up?
I'm looking for people who are willing to share something that they've gone through so that they can help other people. In other words, I'm going to let my long road lead to your shortcut, right? I'm going to let my story become your story in some form or way. What I like to tell people is good speakers speak to be remembered. Great speakers speak to be repeated. Good speakers speak to be remembered. Great speakers speak to be. So it's important to not only have a story, but to have a phrase that people will walk away repeating. Give you a quick example. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at my world championship trophy. But if you've been walking towards me 2 days after I won the world championship in the Chicago airport, you would see my wife on one side of me and me carrying this gigantic crystal trophy, just walking through the Chicago airport. Everybody's looking at me. Everybody's watching me. And people are looking at me like, who is that? You know, what? And Ife, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I was dreaming, but I thought I heard somebody say, is that Denzel Washington?
Hey.
You didn't have to laugh that hard now.
No. We gotta visualize ourselves.
Yeah.
And we take some of the top people that we see in their element, like they're legendary.
Exactly.
Back that quality, because we all have qualities that can make us legends. It's a matter if we cultivate it or not.
That's exactly right. But what I realized in that moment, this is when I realized my life would never be the same. This petite lady in a pink dress runs up to me in the middle of the airport. Everybody's watching. And she starts reading the bottom of my trophy. And she said, 1999 world champion of public speaking. Wow. Say some things. and I was speechless. But that's when I realized no matter where I go in life, people are going to say, would you mind saying some things? So I came to a fundamental understanding about my life as a speaker and really about yours too. I can no longer get ready to speak. I have to stay ready to speak. My new motto is don't get ready, stay ready. And that's the way you're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that exist. So what I did right there, Kevin, is I just told a story and made a point, but people are going to walk away saying, don't get ready, stay ready. They're going to walk away with that foundational phrase that's fewer than 10 words, that's you focused, meaning focused on your audience, that's rhythmic, not necessarily having to rhyme, but easy to say. You know, so some of the foundational phrases I have, what got you here won't get you there, right? Don't get ready, stay ready. My signature story, your dream is not for sale, right? Or average leaders place blame, exceptional leaders take it. So I've got all these different phrases that people can walk away and repeat. And that way I won't just be remembered, I'll be repeated. I always say to people, when you get the buzz, you get the biz, right? So if you get repeated, you're going to get that buzz. And I remember giving a story where the foundational phrase was, your dream is not for sale, in Mysore, India, on the Infosys campus. The next day I woke up, there was a newspaper slid under my door in the hotel. There was a picture of me on the front, and the headline read, your dream is definitely not for sale. And then from that article, I got booked to speak in Tokyo. Again, when you get the buzz, you're going to get the biz. So I have people make sure that they start with the foundational phrase and then build a story around that. And when it comes to storytelling, the most important part is what Lou Heckler, one of the National Speakers Association speakers, says, don't retell it, relive it. Relive it. Retelling it is retelling it from the past, but reliving it makes your audience feel like they're there. They can hear what you heard, they can feel what you felt, and they can be impacted the way they can laugh like you laughed. And so what I like to do is get people to relive their story, pull the audience in, and give them a gift when they leave in the form of a foundational phrase.
All right.
Wow.
Go ahead, Ife.
So you like me in the airport, you speechless now.
Yeah, I mean, this is really good stuff, because I think I met Kevin through Clubhouse, and everyone was tagging themselves as a motivational speaker, like coach, and all that stuff. And there are professionals out there, but you just realize that there's really preparation and an authenticity where you don't just have to put it in your bio. People will tell just by the way you carry yourself and speak that you have a message and you have a mission to accomplish. So,
Ife, I tell you, I went to Ireland and then I went over to London. I was surprised how many brothers are in London too, by the way. But anyway, I'm in London, and I've gotten a lot of compliments over the years. You're going to get compliments, you're going to get feedback, you're going to get torn down. There's all kinds of things you're going to get. But one of my favorite compliments, I always like when people tell me what they get from the speech, what they're going to do with it and so forth, because that's why I speak. But one of my favorite compliments was, it was a guy sitting in the front row in London, a brother. And about halfway through my seminar, he just looked at me and said, man, you are for real. You're just real. And I felt like, well, yeah, I guess I'm just going to be me wherever I go. And I think that authenticity is very, very important. So I'm glad you brought that up.
absolutely, absolutely. And I know a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, whether it's giving a presentation or speech. So how do you overcome fear when you're in front of various audiences? Because I know sometimes it's a different audience, or being in a different country and knowing that sometimes words don't translate exactly that country. How do you deal with fear when you're speaking in front of audiences?
First time I went to Taiwan, and I got up on stage and I realized almost all my humor must have fell in the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, every punchline I gave, crickets, like nothing. But to address the fear issue, I have a different way of looking at fear than a lot of people. I'll give you an example. I mid-90s, my best friend, he said, I want you to sing at my wedding, right? Now, what do you think the first problem is?
You don't sing.
I don't, and I can't. But when we were real young, I could sing, but then your voice changes, and but yeah, I can't. But that's the first problem. Second problem was I wasn't assertive enough to say no. So now here I am about to sing at his wedding, and I'm nervous. And there's that room in the back that all the groomsmen are off. There's always a room. There's always a door, by the way, so in case the groom wants to leave. Anyway, there's room in the back, and we're all in there, and there were like 8 groomsmen, and they're looking at me, and they're saying to me, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Me, the kid, nervous? Come on, I played Division I college basketball in front of 18,000 people. You think I care about singing in front of 200?" In other words, what I was trying to do was fake out my nerves. Don't do that. I'm trying to fake out my nerves and say I'm not nervous. I get up on that stage, the music starts playing, I grab the microphone, and Kevin, my breath left me. I didn't know when my breath was coming back, but I'm gonna tell you one thing: if you can't breathe, you can't sing.
Right.
Now, I know you probably think I turned it around. No, I was the worst wedding singer in the history of weddings. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be his only wedding, right? And so I'm sitting here ruining it. But I learned a lesson from that. You can't fake out your nerves. So what I learned was you got to accept your nerves. You got to accept them. You got to embrace them. You got to flip the script on them. So when I get nervous now and people say, like, when I'm about to take the stage, somebody might say, "Are you nervous?" I say, "I hope so. I hope so," because I know the nerves are there to help me. So you fast forward a couple of years to 1999. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, at the World Championships. There's 2,000 people in the audience. There are these big jumbotrons on each side of the stage. So if I got anything in my nose, it's going to be amplified 100. All this. You can worry. You think I was nervous? Absolutely. But I accepted those nerves. I said, "Thank you, nerves, for being here. I know you're here to help." I flipped the script on my nerves. And I went out there and gave the World Championship speech better than I ever had in practice. And that's because I was never nervous in practice. So one of the things I'd say to people is you want to accept your nerves, you want to flip the script on your nerves, and you also want to understand what I call the 10 times phenomenon. Let me ask you, Ife, if you are nervous before you speak or sing or whatever, how does that manifest in your body?
My heart will start beating fast. I'll probably have a light sweat. I start going over the speech. It's like I know I have the speech prepared. All of a sudden, I want to go through it again because I'm like, oh, I'm about to skip something.
Exactly. And a lot of people get sweaty palms and their hand, their faces. So what I realized was what's happening inside of you is 10 times more than what the audience can pick up. So you might be thinking, "Oh, I'm shaking, I'm this and that," and the audience won't even pick it up. And then the only time we pick it up is when they get on stage and they say, "Oh, bear with me, I'm so nervous." So now we're all out of sorts, right? So if you understand the 10 times phenomenon, if you are willing to accept your nerves and even thank them for being there, or you're willing to flip the script on your nerves, and then last but certainly not least is preparation. When people see me on stage, they say, "Well, I look so easy." I let them know that ease is on the far side of preparation, not the near side. And so those are some of the things I do to make sure that I'm ready for every single audience. I spoke in Denver, August 3rd, I think it was, 1,100 people. 2 of them looked like me. 1,100 people. But guess what? A heart is a heart. A person is a person. My stories are about relationships and things like that. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, those stories are going to connect because that's just universal. So if I'm in China, if I'm in the Middle East, I'm not going to go into a bunch of stories, but when I first went to the Middle East, I went to Doha, to Qatar, and I get up on stage, there's probably 800 people in the audience, but the nearest person to me was about at least 100 feet away. And they're sitting in these huge chairs. And I'm like, how am I going to connect way back here? So I didn't know if I was supposed to do this or not, but I jumped off the stage and I went out front and stood right in front of them. I didn't know if that was the right thing to do. Was I breaking some kind of cultural norm or whatever? I come back to Kuwait to speak to basically that same group about a year later. Every speaker was speaking from right in front of the audience.
Wow.
So I said, wow, maybe I made an impact here.
I'm glad you share these stories with us because before we shut down for COVID, I had just released my book, Indispensable Gains of X's and O's. And I think that's when we had connected. I had 5 speaking engagements that I was making my debut. And one of the ones was a person that knew me personally, had been around me every single day and thought I was very inspirational. And I had this great speech. He had 300 school teachers that we were going to speak, that I was going to speak to. I had an auditorium set up. That day was one of the hottest days of the year. Air conditioning went off. They had to relocate. And I had did my preparation, working on stage, walking around. I had my camera crew, my mic guy, my sound guy, and everything else. And so when we got to the young lady's home on the main line, there were 300 people that looked different from me. And when I talked about my story on how I had to overcome hard times and that my family had left me, all of a sudden I realized my story became my reality, like you said earlier, and I choked up. And I looked at all of those eyes. That 300 pair of eyes looked like 3 million eyes. And the thing that's got my story set up, I went directly into the 7 things, the 7 points I was going to make. It was by far the worst speech that I ever had given. But I also believe that you're only as strong as your last no. One of the people at the end of it said that something you said touched me, because she had escaped from Germany, had been abused by her husband, and was threatening to take her life. And she said, your story made a difference. And I realized that when I'm talking to 300 people, 1,500 people, my story only has to change the life of one person. And so I also made a promise to myself. I said, I will never be ashamed of my own story ever again when telling that. So, I know often when people ask you to speak, I know the question that comes about, at least with me. So, Mr. Valentine, what are you going to talk about when I hire you? What do you say?
Well, I want them to tell me what they want me to talk about. Like when you hire me, here's what I ask them. I say to them, what do you want the audience to think, feel, or do differently as a result of experiencing me? And I think that's a very important question, because I don't want them to think they're just going to be listening to me. This is going to be an experience. What do you want the audience to think, feel, or do differently as a result of experiencing me? So I spoke last week to an organization, and what they said was, we want our leaders to be able to manage the change that we're going through, and we want to focus on team evolution. And so I said, okay. So I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to do my 4 R's to remarkable results, right? I'm going to 4 R's to remarkable results through change and evolution. And for the first time in a long time, when I was rehearsing, I was like, this doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm forcing it. I'm forcing this message. And like Les says, never let what you want to say get in the way of what they need to hear. So I said, I got to do something. And I realized that the lady had sent me on Friday, this is now 2 Fridays ago, 4 norms that they wanted to focus on as they go through this change. So what I did was I took my speech, I took out the 4 R's and replaced it with their 4 norms. And I built my whole speech around their 4 norms. The first norm was assume positive intent. And I went all into my crabs in the barrel and all this stuff with positive people. And I did the same thing with the rest of the message. So no, I'm not going to dictate what the message is. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to hold a pre-conference call with them to make sure they can tell me what the real pain is. And then I'm going to turn their pain into my promise. And if I can't do that, I'm going to recommend them to somebody who can help them. So as an African American, a lot of times people think I speak on diversity. I never have. My audiences are diverse, right? But I never really made that my message. So if somebody says, can you speak on that? I said, no, but I got a guy named Art Jackson who's down in Woodbridge. He can speak on that.
Right.
And so if I can't handle it, I'll send it off to somebody who can. But I'm doing this based off of what their needs are, not what I want to say.
Now you brought up the fact that you lost in a humor speaking contest, but I've laughed about 12 times since we talked. So I think you found your jokes.
What I do is I tell people, never add humor to a speech. Always uncover humor within it. There's a big difference. When you add humor, it feels forced. And the only thing worse than no humor is forced humor. But we have things that happen to us every day that make us laugh. And where you're normally going to find the humor, and I get hired for that now. Honestly, I get hired now because people know they're going to laugh, they're going to have a good time, and they're going to have an experience. Like the group I spoke to last week, that was probably like my 10th or 11th time speaking to them. So they know they're going to have a good experience. But where you're going to find the humor is within your stories, more specifically within your characters, more specifically within your characters' dialogue, what they say to each other. Mm-hmm. Like one of my favorite stories, and hopefully this will hit, is 2012, the Summer Olympics. Remember those? They were in London,
right?
Summer Olympics. So in 2012 Summer Olympics, my 7-year-old son and I are watching the Summer Olympics, and the oldest participant was a 74-year-old equestrian from Japan, right? 74-year-old equestrian from Japan. So My 7-year-old son and I are watching this, and unfortunately, all the commentators kept harping on was the guy's age. Right? They just kept saying, he's 74. Can you believe he's 74? By golly, he's 74. And Ife, at that moment, my 7-year-old son looked up and said, well, how old is the horse? Right? And I'm dying. I'm dying because it's hilarious. The horse is doing all the work, right? So I'm laughing. And so then I say to myself, well, I'm laughing so much, I got to turn this into a story. So I tell that story, and then I tell the rest of it. I say, about a week later, I couldn't get that question out of my mind, so I Googled it. And they asked this man, they said, well, how long will you continue to compete? Guess what his answer was? He said, I can go on forever, but my horse is 15. And that's when I realized my son's question was much more relevant than I thought.
Right.
And even though my son was only 7 years old at that time, he taught me something very important about being remarkable, about being great at something. Never stop asking questions. The moment you stop asking questions is the moment you stop growing. The moment you stop growing is the moment we know from nature is the moment you fall, right? Never stop asking questions. So what I did was I went and I'm something that touched me emotionally in a laughing way. I said, okay, now I need to build a story around that, and I need to give them a foundational phrase. And so people will walk away saying, never stop asking questions. And then I can use that to set up the rest of my speech. So the rest of my speech might be 3 major questions I'm going to ask my audience throughout my keynote. So I'm uncovering the humor based off of the dialogue, what people say to each other, and sometimes inner dialogue, what you say to yourself in certain moments. Like when I met my speaking hero, I met him, I'm going to introduce him to this big crowd. This is years ago, like 22, 23 years ago. And I saw him in the hallway right beforehand. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm Craig Valentine. And because I won the world championship, they're allowing me to introduce you today. This is the biggest honor of my career. You're the man who made me want to get into this business in the first place. Thank you so much for being here. Nothing. Ife, he just looked at me as if to say, you don't belong on the same stage. Yeah, I don't know how you would react to this, but I got to thinking he's about to get an introduction he did not expect.
A knuckle sandwich.
You don't know me. But see, now look at that deeply for a second. Did I say that out loud? No, I thought it. But here's the key when it comes to public speaking. If you thought it then, you can say it now.
Right.
You just need your audience to know it was a thought. So they're laughing at what I was thinking in that moment. So I call that inner dialogue. So we can have character-to-character dialogue. We can have inner dialogue. I can project dialogue onto my audience based on how they're looking at me and get laughs like that. I can bring in quotations and get laughs. So there's all kinds of ways to uncover humor, but the one thing we don't want to do is add humor.
Right.
The big difference.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do, and this was extremely special to do this interview. So again, I'm going to say I'm honored. So I'm not sucking up. I am very proud of you, young man. But I also wanted to get my co-host to speak a lot more than he normally does when we do these podcasts, because I have experienced the 52 speaking tips of Mr. Valentine. But I just realized that evidently I must be on a different pattern, because you changed it from 52 to 50. So I'm doing 2 things wrong. But
no, I have 52 speaking tips, and then I have 50 speaking secrets. I got 2 different programs.
All right. So one of the things I that I would like to do, because I'm extremely proud of you, I want people to know how to get in touch with Craig Valentine. I want people to know a little bit more about the 52 speaking tips and the 50 secrets to 50. I want to promote the living crap out of you. So
thank you.
I want you to go ahead and sell your own boat right now.
But and instead of just telling them where to go, I'll tell them why to go there. This is what I do when I'm in front of an audience. I say, and I just did this last week, raise your hand if a year from now you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the presenter you are today. All hands go up. I say, well, great, then for absolutely free, for no fee, you can go to one of my websites, which is 52speakingtips.com. And that is 52speakingtips.com. And every week for a year, you're going to get an audio lesson from me. And by the end of that year, you will be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. So that's the front door. That's where I would suggest everybody goes. and start learning for free. And it will take your speaking to another level very, very quickly.
All right. And what's the 50 secrets?
50 speaking secrets was people were like, well, what do I do after after this year, after these 52 speaking tips? So I said, well, let me put together a video course, which is very similar. So the 52 speaking tips are audio tips, and then the 50 speaking secrets are 50 video tips that you can. It's like 52 speaking tips on steroids. It's going to take it to that next level because sometimes you have to see it to believe it. And so that's what the 50 speaking secrets are all about.
So with that question asked, we're going to take it to the next level because everyone wants to know as a public speaker, because they hear Tony Robbins, Les Brown, Mel, and all these other people making 6-7 figures for 45 minutes of speaking. Everyone wants to know how I can make that type of money. Everyone can't be, a Super Bowl quarterback 7 times. Everyone can't be the NFL's #1 running back. Everyone can't be LeBron James. And only a few of us, the 3 of us, can be Denzel Washington.
Go.
But, I know through RMK Productions that education is key and doing workshops. And we promote, and I'm patting myself on the back because we find people, we promote their workshops and we do seminars and whatever. Are you set up for one of those yet? If not, we're volunteering.
Am I set up for seminars?
Seminar workshops online? Because
I've been doing plenty of them. Sure. Is that
okay?
Yeah, I've been doing seminars. I've been doing workshops. I have the Inner Circle for Speakers, which is taking 15 people through at a time to create your keynote that should earn them between $4,500 and $9,500 per engagement. It builds in the back of the room sales into the keynote. So I'm working on my 3rd cohort with that right now. I have, based on the World Class Speaking book, I have for the last 14 years, once a year, been certifying speech coaches. So I'm helping people get out there as speech coaches, and they're becoming world class speaking certified coaches. And there are people there who have created 6-figure businesses based off of just speech coaching. So I've been doing that, and I've taken 25 people through each year for the last 14 years. So I've been doing online courses for a long time, and we took it to another level with a Zoom for the last couple of years, because before that it was mostly teleseminars. So yeah, I always believe that you need to have multiple streams of income.
Right.
If you just have one stream of income, that's like sitting on a chair with one leg.
Right.
And eventually it's going to fall pretty quickly. So we've got to have more streams of income. But the other thing that you brought up is, okay, we can't be the top quarterback or be the top this or that. A lot of speakers think, well, I never climbed Mount Everest. I never did anything crazy like that. And my thought is good, because as a speaker, you want to come across as similar rather than special to your audience. If you think about Les Brown, he doesn't have a college degree. You think about Tony Robbins, he doesn't have a college degree. So they initially came across as, hey, I don't have this and that, but I've studied so much that you can learn this from me. So you don't have to. The best way it was put was Mark Brown, who's also a world champion of public speaking. He said, your stories don't have to be sensational. They just have to be sincere.
Right.
And that's the key to me. I just told a story about my son and me watching the Olympics, and he says something that cracks me up. People love that story, but it has nothing to do with climbing Mount Everest or anything like that.
Right.
But people can relate to the story. So we need voices out there. There are some people out there who only you can reach. Right. I can't reach them. Only you can reach them. But in terms of making money in this business, the one thing that's important to understand is we do have to know how to sell. When you're in speaking, you're in sales. And I always tell people, I give them this example. You never want to sell your speech or your product or your service or your idea or even change. You want to sell the results. Got to focus on the results. The example I use is this. Decades ago, I went to buy my first car ever in life. And I went to the dealership, and the salesperson came up to me. He says, are you looking at that car? I said, yes, sir. He said, great, let me tell you about it. This car has these types of brakes, this type of engine, this type of window. What's he trying to say? He's trying to sell me the car. I said, no, thank you, I'm not interested. Because I want him to sell me the results, right? So I go to a different dealership, same day, different salesperson, same car. Now, I'll be honest, this guy, he must have understood it emotionally where I was at that point in my life. You know, at that time I was young and single and looking to mingle. And so he walks up to me and says, "You looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're going to look good in that one." He said, "You're going to be flying down the road. The wind's going to be blowing through your hair. And the girls, let me tell you, the girls will be all over you." What do you think I did?
You bought
I said, "Where do I sign?" Right? He made the sale not because he sold me the car, but he sold me the results.
So did
and Kevin, he lied. He lied. Hey man, I tell you what, I was lonely in that car. Just me and my payment.
There you go.
But what I say to people is, don't sell the product, the service, the idea, change, or yourself. Always sell the result. So as a speaker, you can't come up and say, "I'm a speaker and I speak on this." They don't care. What they care about is what's going to be different for them as a result. Are we going to be able to change and get people to manage and lead change? Are we going to be able to retain our employees? Are we going to be able to present better than we can today? Are we going to be, so we got to come at it results first rather than what we do. If you think back to when I said with the 52 speaking tips, I didn't mention 52 speaking tips until I said, raise your hand if a year from now you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. So go results first and then follow that with the resource or the speech or whatever you plan to give them. If you can become a master of focusing on people's results and turning their pain into your promise, the money will follow.
I totally agree with you. How does one become one of your 25 master speakers?
So there's 2 things. The 15 speakers that I take people through the inner circle, that's something that it's a timing thing, right? Like in December, I put out another call for the class in January, and people they'll get on a breakthrough call with me to see if they're a good fit. And if so, they get in. But what I can tell you right now is the first step in that is to go to innercircleforspeakers.com and watch the free webinar. Go to innercircleforspeakers.com and watch the free webinar. That's the first step in that. Now, for the certified world-class speaking coaches, every June we run that class from June throughout the summer for 12 weeks. And you can go to certifiedspeakingcoach.com for that. Now, honestly, Kevin, normally I won't give people more than one exact next step to do per call or per podcast or whatever, but I feel like there are probably some people listening who have different interests. Some might want to be coaches, some might want to be speakers, some might want to. So I'm giving them a couple of different next steps they can take.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I'm pretty sure that one of the people on this podcast will probably be auditioning for your one of your classes. I'm pretty sure one of us.
Sounds good. I'd love to have you.
All right.
Great energy.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So with that said, again, how does someone get in touch with you? What's the next big thing for Craig Valentine? Talk about that. And if you had one ask or one thing or one wish that you can have come true, and the reason why I ask that, because we have a different type of audience. I'm the first person to say we don't look for hundreds of thousands of people to like or follow, because we have a group of people that have a higher call to action. They don't stop by an accident. They don't drive by an accident. They stop to help. And I know that someone's out there that's going to see you, that's going to pick up the phone, try to find you, or try to find you through me, that's going to want to make a difference in your life. If you had that one ask, what will it be?
So am I asking them a question? Or?
No, I'm asking you, if you had one dream that could come true, if anything, you can just basically say, put it on a piece of paper, put it out there, and tomorrow morning it's going to happen. What would that ask be?
Well, my goal and my dream is to have an information empire that's pretty much all automated and will help people present better, but also motivate people and energize people and help them live their dreams. So the information empire is what's coming next.
You heard it. You heard it, people. You heard it. Craig Valentine. Not only is he good looking, he's funny. He won the trophy from us at RMK Productions and Network. I want to thank you 1,000 times over And remember, you can adopt this too. You're only as strong as your last no. Feel free to use that. I'm the first person to say I'm not funny. I'm hilarious. Um, but I want to thank my listeners for tuning in. This was a treat for not only myself, but I speak for Ife too. Ife,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
you want to say something to Mr. Valentine before we leave?
Yeah, Mr. Valentine, it's been a pleasure just being in this interview. It didn't even feel like that. Sorry, I'm not even supposed to say that word in the podcast. Scratch me out. But it it's I think what's really exciting for me about what the conversation we had, you're a motivational speaker, but none of this felt like you were giving us a motivational speech. It was just us talking, but I could see those points that really make you the leader of your field. So my interest is piqued, and yeah, I want to hear more from you, and hope
Thank you.
it's real soon.
Thank you very much. One of the things I like to leave people with sometimes is a question. And first of all, thank you for having me on the call. This was a blast. Kevin, I know it took a little while for us to link up, but I'm glad we did. And
2 years.
we'll continue to. I didn't know you were keeping score. I didn't know. But one of the things, and it goes back to my Toastmaster days. I'm still a Toastmaster for life because I just feel like I always want to give back. But when I was going through the contest years ago, the international speech contest, when I eventually won, every time I won at the club level, the area level, or division level, or what have you, I would get awards and rewards and trophies and things like that. You just mentioned, but it never failed. There would always be somebody who would come up to me and say, "Hey, man, great job. You're going to win the next one." And I'm like, well, even back in 1999, I would always just say to them, "I don't know. I just want to touch lives. I just want to touch lives." And when I look back at it, the interesting thing is, every time I reached out my hand to touch a life, somebody put a trophy in it, right? But here's the key, Kevin. I never reached for the trophy. I always reached for the life. And so when it comes to speaking, I always ask people, what are you reaching for? Because if you reach to touch lives, you're going to be rewarded beyond measure. But if you reach for the trophy, enough said. Right? So what are you reaching for?
Boy, it is hard to end this on such a dynamic conversation, but I hate to say it has to end, but I'm going to say this to my listeners.
Can we do a part two?
We can do part two. The reason why
it takes 2 more years to get it.
No, you got me now. We know each other now.
Yeah, the reason why I did this podcast was not about me. I wanted to give a platform to people that look like me, that are just as successful or more so successful, to say that anything is possible. Look at Mr. Valentine. He looks like you. He sounds like you. He's gone through what you have gone through. Education is not designed to make you comfortable. It's designed to make you think. And when you believe that it's impossible, and that's the way you live your life, it is impossible. But when you believe in the impossible, you become Mr. Valentine. And with that said, if you like what you've heard, go to RMK Productions and Network on YouTube, subscribe and follow. And like I said, if you ain't about something, then don't follow me, don't subscribe. But if you're about making a change in someone's life, that one person's life, then we need to have you on this team. And please go to Mr. Valentine's website, go to www.52speakingtips.com and follow those speaking tips. Even if you are okay with your presentation right now, you're going to be 3 times better at the end of 52 weeks. Enroll in this class, support this young brother. Don't be, one of those haters, because, if he's not funny, he is smart as hell. He's good looking. So if nothing else, do it for that. But again, my grandfather always says, when you get to a point that you can help someone else, it is your duty to do so. Reach one, teach one. And with that said, we'll fade to black. Thank you.